Hey, Chelsea Amber here from Christian Guitar Girls, an encouraging community for Christian female guitar players and bass players. And I'm so excited for what God is going to do in the future with this community. And if you want to stay in the loop about all the latest news, including when a new episode of this podcast is available, then you can join our email list at christianguitargirls.com/podcast. And when you do that, as a thank you, you will also get a free download of the Christian Guitar Girls Practice Plan ebook. It's a PDF ebook that is designed to help you crush your guitar goals. So make sure you get a copy of that, christianguitargirls.com/podcast. Now, for today's episode, we get to hang out with my friend, my dear friend. I love her so much, Jaylene Johnson. She is a songwriter. Hello. She is a songwriter and an artist/songwriting coach with over 2 decades of experience in the Canadian music industry. And she is now the vice president of the Gospel Music Association of Canada. And she leverages her creative skills and experience combined with background in education as a coach, helping artists and songwriters to hone their skills, get unstuck, and find positive ways forward with their songs and their careers. So hello, Jaylene. Welcome to the podcast.
It is great to be here. It's always awesome to talk to you, Chelsea.
Oh, thank you. So we are pretending that we are 2 friends across the coffee table at a coffee shop, although we are about half a country away from each other. You're based in Winnipeg and I'm here in British Columbia. So what are you drinking?
I have a lovely Pepsi Zero here, just to give me a little pick-me-up before I head into that supper and bedtime hour with my kids.
Yes. Well, today I've got my my green tea. I'm a big green tea lover, so that seems to be my go-to. I feel like a lot of these podcasts, that's what I'm drinking.
Awesome.
So, Christian Guitar Girls, it's a Christian Guitar Girls podcast. You do play guitar, and I'm curious, when did you start playing guitar?
Let me see. I started playing guitar actually when I started writing songs more seriously, as a way to, I guess, inspire other ideas. I'd been to a songwriting workshop, and one of the suggestions had been to try a different instrument. So I was a singer and a piano player, and I decided to pick up a guitar and learn some chords. I never really had formal lessons, and my guitar playing definitely still suffers as a result. But I did pick up a few lessons just before I wrote my Potter and Clay album, and, learned a few other things. I'm definitely more comfortable at a gig having someone accompany me on guitar, even if I'm playing a little bit, but just having them add some other layers and whatnot.
Yeah, well, that's great. The guitar is meant for all sorts of roles, whether it's to be used for songwriting or for performing or as a piece of another, of a band, is what I'm trying to say. Yeah, so that's great. And you had mentioned songwriting, that you do use your guitar for songwriting. And in the intro, I mentioned that you've been active in the Canadian music scene for over 2 decades, which is awesome, wearing many hats. And we're actually going to be focusing on your role as a songwriter. So how did you get into songwriting?
I think words and music were a part of my life right from day one. They called me the talking baby, and then music, always singing, or even my parents. I was very lucky to be in music lessons, but I didn't really marry the two until I was a little bit more grown up. I think I wrote one song when I was 10 or 11 that I performed in church, and then I was in a rock band, and I'd present some songs, in high school to the guys in the rock band, and they were young guys and not too affirming of, me as a songwriter.
I'm sorry.
Oh, no, that's fine. But so I didn't really know if I had anything. And then when I went into the studio as a young woman, I was going to record a jazz and gospel album. And then the producer said, well, have you ever written any of your own songs? His name was Lloyd Peterson. And so I said, well, I've written a few, and I'd been to a couple workshops, and I was definitely really interested in this idea of marrying these two things, words and poetry and music. And I played him a couple things, and he said to me, Jaylene, you're a songwriter. He said, you need to write songs and let's do a record of your own songs.
Wow. Oh,
And that was amazing. I mean, that was just the affirmation that I needed from someone I respected. And so I went into the closet, I guess, and songwriting closet, and I wrote. And, you know, the songs that were released, they're very precious to me because they were a moment in time. And a couple songs went on to win some gospel music awards, you know, in the States and in Canada. So that was affirmation. But as far as being commercially viable songs, you know, it would take me a while to learn how to write those.
That's a process.
Definitely.
Yeah, and that's great. Can you, when you look back at the songs that you've written at in the beginning, and then you know, the songs that you said you wrote a song today, even, there must be a marked difference, I guess. You talked about how that would be quite a steep learning curve, I guess, learning how to, you know, just write for yourself versus writing in a way that can connect to others.
You know, it's interesting you say that, because I feel in some ways like I stepped away from my artistry a little bit when I moved into the songwriting world. I had a co-pub deal with a publisher, and I was so enamored with songwriting and writing across genres and different kinds of songs and experimenting. And I was learning so much. I'm still learning so much. I mean, that's the beauty of songwriting. It's like golfing, you know, you'll never perfect it. But so some of my own voice as an artist, I think I had set that aside. And so with my last album, Potter and Clay, I actually was in studio singing backups for a friend. And I had this notion, this feeling inside, like I needed to go back and write some things for myself. It had been a few years since my last album, I think 5 years or something. And I said to my friends in the studio, so I have this trip to Nashville booked, and I was going to go and co-write some songs and network and do all that. I try to do that regularly. Everything's booked. I have my place to stay, but something inside me is telling me to rent this cabin that I found on Kijiji and just go by myself and see what comes out. And they all started chanting in the studio, "We want cabin songs. We want cabin songs." So I did it. I canceled my trip to Nashville, and away I went to the cabin. Wow. And, you know, it was so cool because the things that I'd been learning over the years through co-writing and just continuing to write songs, it's like they had become a little bit innate. And I set myself a goal. I said, editor, critic, get out of my mind. I'm just going to write what I write, and I'm going to accept what I write and see if anything comes of it that I would maybe then want to edit and work on.
Yeah.
You know, I made a goal of 2 songs a day. I still procrastinated all day. So I start my process just before supper and then write another one after supper. And I ended up writing these songs that became my album, Potter and Clay. And it's like the cork was popped off of a bottle. It was just a beautiful, it's not always like that, but it was a beautiful songwriting experience. So how I feel like I've changed and shifted is that these things that maybe I didn't know early on starting out are now kind of innate. And so as I'm writing, I kind of am able to self-edit, but without it being too loud of a critical voice that impedes the creativity, if that makes sense.
Yeah, that's awesome. I find that so hard, though, sometimes to just to you know, tell that inner critic, that little editor, you know, to go away, take a hike. And there is a spot for this, my inner critic, but not in the initial draft. I heard someone say, give yourself permission to write a bad song, and I loved that advice, because if you have this pressure that, oh, it has to be good, then, you know, it's a paralysis of analysis, I guess, what they call it. It just, for me, it stops me. I feel like, and I feel like if I am writing by myself, I can almost write better than when I'm with someone else, because I can let the ideas flow a little bit more freely. Whereas the inner critic seems to be a little bit louder when I'm in a room co-writing with somebody.
Yeah, well, of course, you know, because there's the interpersonal dynamic, and you know, some of the professional songwriters that I've had the good fortune to work with, there's a similar personality trait in that most of them tend to be, and myself included, tend to be very open individuals, open with our emotions, open with our experiences. And often when I'm working with writers and they might be struggling with a lyric, the conversation goes to, what is it that you really want to say? Because that's going to get to the heart of your song, and probably the heart of your chorus. It might even get to the title. Because once you can figure out that concept on an emotional level, on a conceptual level, what is the message? What is it you really want to say? Then it's a little bit easier to decide, hey, maybe this line isn't for this song, or, maybe we need to relook at this verse because it's not really delivering on the thing that I want to say. Not that it's not a good idea, but maybe it's better in another song. And so much of it is about this interpersonal conversation and comfort level and trusting each other that, we're trying to get to the best idea, but also the core idea of what the artist wants to say and how the artist wants to say it.
Yeah, and it's hard to, and I imagine for you, if in a coaching session you want to help the person, but then you also want to be encouraging, but then also say, hey, maybe this lyric needs work. I imagine, do you find that's kind of a hard dance to figure out how to keep them encouraged while also, saying this lyric needs some work. We artists, can kind of look at our songs as our little babies and, like, oh, you told me my baby was ugly. No, I just think that the baby needs a haircut, or whatever.
That is so true. And I've been that way too. I would say a journey for me is learning how to be a little less direct, because I can be quite direct and get very intense and passionate about a lyric or a song, and it can feel overwhelming, especially for some personalities. And so I've had the gift of some feedback in that area, and it's something that I work on because my heart is to encourage. And I also think there is a balance to be struck between finding a way to move a song forward in a way that's going to connect really well emotionally, but also drawing out the artist's unique voice and their unique way that they can say it, because that is what's also cool to people, is hearing something that is unique and that's not just a cookie cutter of everything else. And honestly, if the artist doesn't feel comfortable singing it or doesn't feel comfortable with the words, they're not going to sing it. They're not going to record it. So, an act of service that I need to do and to learn to do better and better as a coach or as a co-writer is to encourage, to provide an environment, where those best ideas can come forward.
Yeah. Well, we've worked together songwriting, and I've found you to be very encouraging, and I like that you go in with a servant's heart, I guess, to use popular language. You go in with a servant's heart in terms of, you would always ask me, what it is on my heart that God is doing that I want to talk about, and bringing that out. I've had experiences with other songwriters who shall remain, actually one in particular, who shall remain unnamed. It was my first time down in Nashville for a songwriting trip, and he just would not listen to anything I was saying. Like, I kept saying, these lyrics aren't me. They're not me. They're not something that I would naturally say. And I kept saying that over and over again. And he just kept barging ahead, not listening. And guess what? I never used the song.
Yeah.
So I love that you go into it with a servant's heart for the artist in terms of wanting to bring the best out of them rather than, my experience with this other particular songwriter. And this, that songwriter, he's very talented. He's written with other people. He's had a lot of success. So I wish him well. There's no hard feelings. It's just, I just found we weren't seeing eye to eye. So I appreciated working with you and seeing, like, oh, wow, she really does want to see what God is doing, what God has laid on my heart, and help me serve that up. So thank you for.
Oh, well, Chelsea, you bring so much to the table. You make a co-writer's job easy. And honestly, this aspect of my person is something I'm learning still. It's definitely the posture that I want to have is the posture of a servant.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I have lost my ability to sing. You know, it's a story people can read about on my website. I've been very public about it.
Mm-hmm.
And so now I find myself in this support role.
Mm-hmm.
And there's an opportunity here. So I need to posture myself.
Mm-hmm.
But even in that, I can get so enthusiastic and passionate about serving and helping, and that it can be overwhelming too. You know, make sure that, you know, I temper my passion a little bit, and just, you know, walk with a little more awareness than maybe I have at times.
I think it's great. I've enjoyed your passion and enthusiasm, you know, just
thanks, Chelsea.
to write with someone if they're not excited about the song. I can't imagine how discouraging that would be. So I think that's actually a strength of yours to be
Thank you.
to be very passionate. So thank you for that and the way that you support your fellow artists. And you said that you just wrote a song today, actually. How can you tell us a little bit about that song?
Oh yeah, I've had the good fortune of working with an artist named Kelly Badeau. She's a world artist. I met her at church a few years ago. Her and her sister, actually, her sister's an artist in the Christian music industry. And I fell in love with their talent, their abilities. And so today I had the chance to write with Kelly, and we've been working on a song, and it's a up tempo, you know, which I find a little harder to write. It's up tempo and it's got a great message, but without being too cheesy deep. And it was just super fun to write it with her. And yeah, I hope she'll record it and that it'll go well and everybody will have the chance to hear it.
Awesome. And I think you've done a song with her before, haven't you?
Mm-hmm.
I believe.
A couple songs.
Okay. Awesome. What were the other songs so people are able to search up the songs you did?
We wrote a song called Hypnotizing, a song called Promise. Mm-hmm. With Kareen, I've written Perfectly Made, which is a really fun song, you know, based on the Psalm 139.
Very cool.
So, that's been great. I've had the chance to actually, if people want to check out a song we've been listening to a lot in the car, there's a re-release of a song I wrote with J.J. Heller called Keep You Safe. And it's a lullaby. And of course, having young children, you know, just beats my heart. And they're constantly asking for the lullaby now, but they did it with symphonic instrumentation, and it's on, I think it's I Dream of You Volume 2, but people could check that out. It's just lovely.
So in all of your experience with, you know, writing with songwriters of different levels, you know, people who are just starting out and then people who are very experienced like J.J. Heller, what makes a good song in your opinion?
Oh, that's a tricky question, you know, because it's subjective to a point. And yet I think when we look at songs that stand the test of time, you know, that people are still singing decades later, I believe they have a universal quality to them, that there is a message there that is for a lot of people, not just a niche group of people or our grandma and our best friends. I think that, you know, something that I keep hammering on is one message per song. And I think even more important in that is the emotional message. And that was actually something that a writer named Troy Sampson had said in a session, and I never forgot it. He said that line by line, he tries to keep emotional consistency. And when we have a great song, a song we want to play again and again, it's making us feel something. It becomes our song because we connect to it emotionally. And that is the song that becomes a soundtrack to some aspect of our lives, whether it's our loss or our joy or our profound love or our anger or our curiosity or whatever it is. And that is the journey as a songwriter is. And I also think, how can I say something in an accessible way, or some might use the term simple, though that's, I don't want to say simplistic, but in a simple way, something profound in a simple way, something profound in an accessible way. And I think that's a great song. And that's the craft. As we learn the craft of songwriting, I believe our songs become songs that better connect with an audience.
Yeah. And I like what your point about saying things, saying these really profound truths in a simple way. I mean, when we sing worship songs in church, really that is the goal of the songwriter, is to make these profound truths of God accessible to, the mom who just came in with her toddlers that were screaming all morning, or the I don't the young man who just lost his father, or it just um, helping those songs communicate the truths of God, but in an accessible way. And so I love that, because I think sometimes artists can get a little bit offended when you say, let's say it in a simple way. They're like, what? But I'm a great artiste. I need things to be complicated. I need to use all these. And there is room for that, in specific spots, to add this fancy chord or add this, whatever. But there is value in also, uh, in keeping things simple.
And song form is important too, because
Mm.
I mean, let's face it, there are people who write more complex things and they find a vast audience as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But if you can give people a form, and I love symmetry, or the use of the good use of repetition. It's not that you can't have some complex elements, or that some complex music won't reach people emotionally. It can.
Mm-hmm.
I think where songwriters sometimes get into trouble is that they set the song out on this journey,
Mm-hmm.
and then something will happen in the song, whether it's an asymmetrical aspect to be clever, or something thrown in there that's totally different, or uneven numbers of lines, or the rhyme scheme's not there, or something, and it becomes very jarring for the listener.
Mm-hmm.
Now, if that's intentional, that's their artistic choice. But sometimes I just think that's a novice error,
Mm-hmm.
And so I do wonder, even in the more complex things, there's still form of some sort. There's still something, a motif even, or some emotional consistency there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
That the listener can grab a hold of.
Yeah.
You want them to be immersed in the moment. And that's another thing I will say about songs, that often great songs have moments.
Mm.
I mean, think of a Coldplay concert, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Or a lot of these big acts that have had mass appeal. There are moments that happen in their songs, and when they get to the live stage, they can pull these moments out and just deliver them in a really cool way live, and the whole audience knows the moment's coming, and they want to participate in the moment. So I don't know if any of that makes sense, but I think about
it does, yeah.
They write with people. What are the moments here?
I love that. I think about that kind of for production, on the production side of things, because if I'm recording a song and I'm picturing how to do it live, then I think, oh, what are some moments in this song that I could really, what's the word I'm looking for? And just kind of extract, what moments can I extract from the song? So sometimes if we add some stomps and claps in the production, for example, then that translates to something that I can do for audience participation in the live concert, to help bring people in, to get them moving, get them participating, and, actively involved. So yeah, I love that. So do you have one encouraging word or piece of advice that you could offer a budding songwriter, or someone who's just getting ready to put out their first song?
One?
Well, if you got more, that's fine.
Well, I wish that I had seen early on more of the big picture and the long game.
Mm-hmm.
And I wish that I had understood more about relationships and collaboration in music early on. And I also think that there's an aspect of objectivity that's needed to temper our artist sensibilities. And yes, by all means, to be artists and to have an artistic voice and artistic direction, and to be strong in that is good. But I also think that there's a level of objectivity that we need to be able to step back and say, if we are wanting to connect, i.e. we want to record, we want people to add our songs to playlists, we want to do live shows, to be able to step back and say, is this really connecting? And if
Mm-hmm.
it's not, why not?
Mm-hmm.
If it's not, am I okay with that?
Mm-hmm.
And maybe I am. Or is there an opportunity maybe here to grow and to learn and move on?
Yeah.
And to be objective requires the absence of ego.
Take
And
some
sometimes,
humility.
oh, it
Mm-hmm.
does. And sometimes ego is just a mask for our deep fear.
Mm.
You know, it's like that musician that comes into the studio session and has to play every single lick that they know,
Mm.
where when you play with the more seasoned player, they play just in the right spots, just the
Yeah.
perfect thing. And
Mm-hmm.
they don't need to overplay because they have nothing to prove.
Right. Yeah. That's great.
Timing, sometimes it's timing too, the long game, think long term. It's great if you can release a single, but what comes next? What are we building into our lives that will come after?
Mm-hmm.
And to go for it and keep the joy in it,
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
keep the joy in using our gift and in learning and in growing and connecting with other people through music. I mean, that's just such a
Yeah.
special thing.
Yeah. Those are wonderful pieces of advice. Thank you so much for that. And thank you for your time. If somebody wanted to book you for a songwriting session or for coaching, where can they find you online?
www.jaylenejohnson.com. They can connect with me. There's a contact form there. Or Jaylene@jaylenejohnson.com will also reach me. I
Mm-hmm.
love to work with artists and songwriters. I love to help get to your core message and help you make a plan and carve it out or figure some things out about your songwriting or about yourself.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and I also coach with Worship Arts Canada. People could find me on there. There's a bunch of coaches that do various things through John Buller's initiative, Worship Arts Canada. So you could find me
Okay.
there.
So I will leave links in the description so that people can find you, find Worship Arts Canada. And thank you so much for sharing about songwriting. It was great to hear your perspective, as a seasoned songwriter with experience with co-writers of, all stages of their career. So, to our listeners, thank you so much for tuning in. If you enjoyed this chat, there are many more to come. So, make sure you hit the follow or subscribe button on YouTube or whatever platform you're using to listen to this podcast. And don't forget to join the Christian Guitar Girls email list at christianguitargirls.com/podcast. All right, so that is it for today. Thank you so much for tuning in. I will catch you in the next episode. And until then, happy strumming.
And thank you, Chelsea. I just love what you're doing here.
Aw, thanks, Jaylene.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.